Welcome to session 1, entitled Revelation, Childlike Behaviors. So we're gonna dive deep into those childish behaviors we did when we were younger, or that we did last week. So our memory verse is taken from 1 Corinthians 13 and 11. And it says, "When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put aside childish things." I know when I was a child, I did a lot of childish things. When I was in junior high, our teacher told us that she wanted us to get into groups of 3 to do a class project. Now, I had a huge crush on a boy in my class, but so did my best friend. So it put us in a pretty awkward position. Nevertheless, when she asked us to go into groups of 3, both of us ran to his side and we decided that we would form a group of 3. So I was excited because we were gonna get to go to his house and spend time with him and be able to work on this group project together. Little did I know that 3 was the crowd and I was the third wheel in the crowd. So we're working on the project and they tell me that they're gonna go upstairs and get some more materials. I was very naive at the time, and so at the time I'm saying, okay, sure, I'll wait down here while you go and get some materials. And so after a while, I noticed that I was the only one working on the project. So I walk upstairs, and when I look in his room, both of them are making out on his bed. I was devastated because this was my crush, and I think I knew that she had a crush on him too, but I didn't think that any of us would kind of just snub the other person, and the jealousy that started to come into my spirit at that time just continued to grow. And when I thought about what she did to me, I felt like if we were both there, that it was kind of unfair to leave me downstairs. But sometimes we all do unfair things. We're interested in that instant gratification. What is gonna serve us right now? And so she was determined to have instant gratification, which I know I fall into sometimes. And I was fueled with jealousy, which again, a lot of us experience a lot of times. This jealousy and need for instant gratification reminded me of a story in the Bible about 2 brothers that you may be familiar with, Esau and Jacob. The Bible tells us that Esau and Jacob were struggling in their mother's womb. That means that they were fighting before they were even here. And when they were being born, Jacob was grabbing on the heel of Esau. So that jealousy was beginning from a very, very, very early age. And we saw as they both grew older that the jealousy that Jacob had against Esau continued. One day Esau was working in the field and he came inside and he was famished and tired, and he asked his brother to give him some of his meal. Jacob, being jealous of his brother, told him, "If you sell me your birthright, I'll give you some of my meal." Esau, not realizing what it meant to be the oldest child, it meant that you got all of the inheritance, all of the blessing. But instead of realizing this, he squandered it away for some food. And he said, "What good is it to me if I die?" And he wasn't gonna die, but that's just what we do. We want the need for instant gratification, so we don't realize the consequences that come later. And so Esau didn't realize the consequences. So Jacob got the birthright and Esau got a meal. Jacob fulfilled his need for jealousy and Esau got his instant gratification. Well, as they got older, it continued. When Isaac was dying, he told Esau, "Go out, make me a meal so I can bless you and die." Rebekah, whose favorite was Jacob, told Jacob, "Your father's gonna give a blessing to your brother. You should go out and I will prepare the meal and then come back, put fur on, pretend to be your brother so that you can get the blessing from your father." The only reason Jacob believed this could work is because he knew that he already deceived Esau when they were younger. So he went out, got the game for his mom to prepare for his dad, and he went and he got the blessing. When Esau returned, Isaac had already blessed Jacob. Isaac said, "There's nothing that I can do. I've already given him the blessing. Your brother will rule over you." Esau was so furious. He said, "First, my brother stole my birthright. Now he's stealing my blessing." He said as soon as his father passed away, he was going to kill Jacob. When Rebekah heard this, she was filled with fear for her son because she knew it was her fault. She encouraged him to deceive his father and now cheated Esau out of his blessing. So she told Jacob, you have to run away. You have to go to your uncle and live with him. And so Jacob went on his way, and we know that story all too well of how he was deceived by his uncle. And after 20 years of working for his uncle and 2 wives and that long saga between them, he had an encounter with God. And when Jacob had that encounter with God, he realized that he needed to go back to his brother and apologize for what he did and ask for forgiveness. And when he was going to his brother, he was so nervous. He sent servants ahead of him. He sent so many people ahead of him just to make sure that his brother forgave him. And the Bible tells us that Esau met him with love. So Esau also forgave his brother. And so what it made me really think about is when we have these childish behaviors, when we deal with jealousy or instant gratification or whatever childish behaviors we have, it made me wonder, how early can these childlike behaviors begin? And the Bible tells us in Genesis 25 and 23, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 people will come from you and be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. In Genesis 25 and 26, it says, after this, his brother came out grasping Esau's heel with his hand, so he was named Jacob. So what this shows us is that childlike behaviors can begin as early as birth. My mother told me a story about when she was pregnant with me, and when she was about to deliver me, the doctors realized that the umbilical cord was tied around my neck twice. And I went into fetal distress, and they really thought they were gonna lose me. And I fought my way out, and I survived. Clearly, I'm here. But I was very strong-willed and very determined to be here. And that's the same kind of personality I have today. But those kind of behaviors, sometimes the enemy wants to use those to his advantage. When you're a strong-willed child, that means you want everything you want, and you want it now, and you're determined to get it. My mother got tired of me constantly begging for things that I wanted. And so we have to be careful to know that these childish behaviors can have a negative effect on the relationships that we have. And so the other question I wanted to think about after I explored how early they can begin, because they begin from birth, the next question is, what do some of these childlike behaviors lead us to believe? Genesis 25:30-31 answers that perfectly. And it says, he said to Jacob, let me eat some of that red stuff because I'm exhausted. That is why he was also named Edom. Jacob replied, first, sell me your birthright. Jealousy leads us to believe that we deserve what someone else has. How many of us have said, why is that person getting married? Why is that person getting that job? Why is that person getting that condo that we wanted? And that jealousy can just fuel a negative spirit in us. And as we can see, it can start at a very, very early age. Jacob grabbed Esau's heel when they were coming out of the womb. And so we have to be very, very cautious of how we are allowing these behaviors to seep into our everyday life. When I was younger, as I told you with the story with my crush, I never got the guy. I was always the person that had a crush on somebody and never had somebody to say, this is my boyfriend. And so that jealousy kept on growing and growing and growing inside of me. And so when I was in high school, and as you read in chapter 1, when I first got my first boyfriend, and he told me, well, I just got out of a relationship, so I don't know if we can be in a relationship. Well, I had to use manipulation. I was tired of never getting the guy, and I was tired of being jealous of everyone else. And so I manipulated that situation in order to get what I wanted. And like Esau, when we want instant gratification, we want what we want right now. And I didn't want to wait to have a boyfriend. I didn't want to continue to be jealous of all of my friends who had somebody. I wanted to be with him now. And so I went ahead and manipulated the situation, and that was wrong. And what helps us to really point that out is Genesis 25 and 32. Look, said Esau, I'm about to die, so what good is this birthright to me? Esau couldn't even see the value in his birthright at the time, and I couldn't see the value in being single at the time. Not saying that we can't have a boyfriend or we can't have a girlfriend. I'm just saying that certain times in our life, we have to realize that God is calling us closer to Him. And at that time, God was calling me closer to Him. Childish thoughts and behaviors lead us to trade God-ordained blessings for our instant gratification. So when you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm tired of being single at 35, 40, or 45. I do not want to go through this again. We have to be really cautious if we're allowing our childish behaviors to seep in, or are we really listening to what God is saying? And if we're at that moment of desperation of saying, God, I'm tired of this season, I'm ready to trade it in for something else, then that means we're not listening to Him, because He tells us that He knows the plans He has for us. And those plans are to prosper us. So if He has a great future for us, then we need to trust that. So we have to think about, what is God's response to our childlike behaviors? Genesis 27, 36 to 37 answers that perfectly. So he said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me twice now. He took my birthright, and look, now he's taking my blessings. Then he asked, haven't you saved a blessing for me? But Isaac answered Esau, look, I have made him a master over you, have given him all of his relatives as his servants, and have sustained him with grain and new wine. What then can I do for you, my son? Esau's consequence was that he lost the blessings. And Jacob's consequence was he had to run. So God, He allows us to go through these painful situations when we make mistakes, because He wants us to learn from these situations. He wants to know that there are consequences to our mistakes. We're human, and because of His grace, He forgives us. But there are consequences to the things that we have done that are outside the will that He has for us. Genesis 27, 42 to 43 tells us, listen, your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you. So now, my son, listen to me. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. It's a sad situation when we have family members who want to attack each other, and family members who have to be separated because we went outside of the will of God. But that is sometimes what happens when we're not listening to God. God has clear instructions of what He has for our life, and sometimes we just need to be still and trust Him and stop giving into these childish behaviors that we have. So the final question that you may be wondering, and that I have been wondering from time to time, is how do we overcome these childish behaviors? Well, God wants us to learn from our mistakes. Esau lost a blessing, and Jacob went on and had to run away from his family and then was deceived by his uncle. So if we want to overcome these mistakes that we went through of losing things in our lives and being separated from people that we love and going through these hardships, then we need to return back to God. As I mentioned before, Jacob had an encounter with God that moved him towards grace and love. In Genesis 33 and 3, it says, he himself went on ahead and bowed to the ground 7 times until he approached his brother. God's love requires humility. If we want to truly understand how we can overcome these childish behaviors, then we have to realize that humility is a very, very important part of this process. After 20 years, Jacob had an encounter with God, and he was truly, truly sorry for what he did to his brother. And the Bible tells us that his brother Esau responded in a similar way. In Genesis 33 and 4, it says, but Esau ran to meet him, hugged him, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Then they wept. So as we can see, God's love also requires forgiveness. It's important for us to learn forgiveness and humility. It's true, we all struggle with childish behaviors. We want that happily ever after. We want that certain guy or certain girl, even when God is telling us, no, walk away, that's not what I have for you. We all want to prove everyone wrong who's saying, why aren't you married at this point in your life? And sometimes we rush into things just because we want to prove something to society. But what God is trying to say is those childish behaviors that have that need to be jealous or envious. We scroll through Facebook and scroll through Instagram or Snapchat and we're jealous, and we're feeding that jealousy. And we're feeding those childish behaviors of saying, what I want is what I want it now. But God is saying, I need you to have humility. I need you to show forgiveness. And I need you to trust me so that you can overcome these childish behaviors that are in you. The topic of this session is revelation, childish behaviors, because I believe God wants to do a true revelation in your spirit. He wants you to realize that when I was a child, I acted as a child. I thought as a child. And now I'm ready to put childish ways behind me. So if you are ready to put childish ways behind you, if you are ready to love with a God-ordained love and to have a relationship that reflects God's love, then I encourage you to put those childish ways behind you. Tell God, I'm ready to be an adult, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and most of all, spiritually. Thank you so much for sharing with me in session 1, and I look forward to sharing with you guys next week.